25 minutes before 8 o'clock. Hi, Mrs. Fletcher. Good morning.
Hi, morning, Ronnie.
Thank you for joining us once again.
My pleasure.
Mrs. Paula Fletcher is the Executive Director of the National Road Safety Council, and you have a special word for our school children and their parents and their guardians listening to us this morning.
Yes, I do. Beginning of the new school year, let it be a safe year. Let us practice good road safety habits. Learned, of course, first from the persons who we look up to, our guardians. So it's using our guardians and parents and teachers, using our pedestrian crossings where provided, and we have to recognize that, we don't have enough crossings. So where you don't have a crossing, you cross at a spot where you can see both to the right and to the left, not near any corners.
Yes.
So you may have to walk a little distance from where you live or where you go to school to be able to come back to the place that you want to go to.
Yes.
Because we tend to want to take this straight line across. So if there's no crossing, please cross where it is safe to do so, where you can look up and down to be able to see if a vehicle is coming. Of course, no playing. And this horse playing that sometimes our children can engage in, as well plugging their ears when they're listening to music. And the new one, walking and texting, or just using the telephone and not focusing on really understanding and getting a grip of the what's happening on the roadway.
Sure. And can we ask our communities, and where possible our schools, whoever can help, that the brightening, the repainting of the pedestrian crossing should be done now?
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
This is usually done a lot of times in terms of maintenance.
Labor Day.
When we have our Labor Day.
Yes, but some of them are really, really faint, and they're arresting when they're glowing and properly white. And I think the Ministry of Works, and the Ministry of Education, if they just challenged our communities, we could get them done, and we can do straight lines too, Mrs. Fletcher.
Yes, we could, because we don't have to fill them in.
No, and they're not the only ones who can do it.
Usually the straight lines are at intersections.
Yeah, no, I meant we can make them tidily done, It doesn't have to be done by some machine or some expert. It's best to have them really, 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 really boldly done, eh?
Right. No, we agree with that, and we as we'd love to ask, as you say, the communities, but we're also asking the NWA, which we did actually last Thursday when we had a meeting, to ensure that our crossings are really such, in terms of what is prescribed. And even the ball and pole needs to be there, because that is what the driver will see at a distance.
Sure, we're going to tell Mr. Shaw when we're speaking to him in half an hour that you say so. We all do.
Well, there are the challenges that we have, because we know a lot of the money from our coffers goes to service debt, and not enough, unfortunately, for development. So there's that challenge.
We can find enough for this. So.
That challenge is made worse too when persons take down the ball and pole and use it for other purposes.
Yes,
so we
indeed.
really have to think as a nation too, what we want.
Tell me though, little children, preschool children, by and large, we shouldn't let them out on the street on their own.
No, Ronnie, and that is really one of the messages that I'd love to leave today with all who will hear. Our children just don't have the mental and physical capability to deal with the complex traffic environment. That's just how the Lord made them, When we talk about this business of looking right, left, right, again, depending on the age of the child, do you know it takes time for them to refocus?
Yes.
Their eyesight is just not as well developed as an older child or certainly an adult. We talk too about the distribution of their weight. They tend to be a little heavier in the head at a young age, so they topple much easier.
I see.
They're not easy to be seen, which is why we encourage the use of the hand in the air signal, where they put their hand up, therefore sort of elongating them. So
that's really good. And a lot more children are doing this now,
Yes. The one thing I'd love to caution, though, is that, I get calls sometimes that persons are abusing it because they put their hand in the air, even adults, and then they step out. That's not how you use it. You put your hand in the air to be seen. And when you recognize that the driver has seen you and has stopped, and the way is clear, then you proceed, still keeping your hand in the air. So it can be useful because the cars have signals. We want to children, pedestrians to also have a signal. That's the idea behind that.
Okay, that's good. Now, it's also important that that people who are in vehicles, Mrs. Paula Fletcher, that's where the children are most helpless. They get into a minibus or a taxi. And what they must do, ma'am, they become they're ambushed almost by careless drivers.
And this business. Have you ever seen these drivers? They have these persons hustling who, I don't know what you call them. Yeah. That they don't actually go in the taxi, but they're packers. They pack the taxis.
Yes, ma'am.
And they're holding on to our children, holding on to our women. I just can't understand why we've reached this stage.
Loaders, I understand they're called too.
Loaders. Right. Yeah. It's not really a good development at all, and we mustn't get our children accustomed to being handled in this way. And we have to say to our children, listen, these taxis that are packed, where you can't get a seatbelt, it's unsafe. A lot of these drivers of these PPVs, some of them are not really even legally registered as such. They're robots. If the police stops them sometime, they will run and leave that vehicle not even properly stopped, in terms of putting it in park and pulling up the handbrake. So we're putting ourselves at risk. But the children are seeing the adults do it. Yeah. The adults are not saying to them, don't do it. Yeah. And it's a serious problem we have. So I just want to say that we need to desist from this practice. What we notice, Ronnie, is that even though we have had a significant decrease, 19% in the amount of fatal crash events. Yes, we have had an increase. We have had a decrease of 19% in the actual fatal crashes each event. Yes, but we have seen an increase in the fatalities. This speaks to the fact that persons are not being safely conveyed, and am I right? They're more at risk.
Am I right in saying that children are a disproportionate level of the victims, eh?
Yes, and there's a socioeconomic context to that, because it's unfortunately the child whose parent cannot afford to convey them in their own motor vehicle. Yes.
They're the ones who are most at risk.
Comment there on our state. Yes. Children in Trinidad, and I don't really, I hope nobody feels anyway about me making this comment, but children don't die on the roads in Trinidad. Because there's a high level of education in the schools. In fact, the gas and oil companies, because they do have that advantage. Yes. Actually, private sector works quite a bit in the schools.
They do road safety education?
Oh yes, at a very, very high level.
But then we may not be able to get that level of sponsorship, Mrs. Paula Fletcher. But this is something that we can inculcate on our television. The children watch television. They can. The teachers in the basic schools and the early grades of the primary school can they do help, but they can do more on this score. We really need a strong program. You should be given time by this, what I call it, Jamaica Information Service, at prime time instead of all the propaganda.
There's a fair amount of public education and initiatives in schools. Not enough, I suppose, because of course we're not having the impact. So in fact, last week the National Road Safety Council, as well as the Road Safety Unit of the Ministry of Transport and Works, and the police, a representative from the Police Traffic Division, we met with the Minister of Education and his Chief Education Officer to put on the table the fact that yes, there are interventions in schools. You also have the Jamaica Automobile Association and the Bank of Nova Scotia. They actually fund trucks that go into schools that simulate the traffic environment and put the children through the paces. So there is stuff happening, but we can't say, for instance, is there a standard product? What's the level of exposure? Is there? Have we standardized it? I don't think we're there.
Yeah, well, we need to support you for that. Get you on the screen. We need to support you for that and get you on the screen. Yes? Yeah. We should be running a campaign 6 weeks before school starts, ma'am. and the periodic intervals.
With a minuscule amount of funds, and we couldn't start it long before, but we're actually rolling out one.
Spend money on the wrong things.
Funded by the National Health Fund.
Yes. Well, we support all the ventures, encourage the teachers and the motorists, particularly the public passenger vehicle operators, to be really mindful of the little children, and our school children themselves, as they grow older and more conscious, to be extremely careful, not only for themselves, but for the little ones with whom they are in contact.
Right. And meanwhile, we're just asking the motorists, because a lot of times, the police tell us it is pedestrian error.
Yes. Well, we have to
but we have to ask the motorists then to be very mindful, particularly of the children and the elderly.
Yes, and to allow for each other's mistakes.
Yes, we have to allow for that.
Yes. Thanks so much for this morning. Thanks for the work you're doing.
Pleasure as always.
This is Paula Fletcher, Executive Director of the National Road Safety Council. Hello, we're spending money on the wrong things. Yes, we want to save life. Yes, we should be having a road safety campaign on that kind of on a huge scale in order to prevent the carnage on the roads. You know what it costs us? You know what it means to a family? You can't put a price tag on the loss of life. Yes, and the National Road Safety Council is limited, too limited. Even the few words I give here this morning, they're much more effective ways of reaching to the children and to the operators. So, let's decide what our priorities are, and we can find a good reason to spend any amount of money. The question is, what is the most necessary and helpful thing? This is what I have against some of the extravagances that we see all around us. Soon come.